Hey guys, welcome back to more Reddit HOA stories. In this legal advice story, a homeowner association sues a farmer over solar panels he installed on his farm for over $65,000. Let's dive right into the video. And the first legal advice title story starts like this. So I own a small farm on the edge of a town that exploded with development recently. I've got a legit farm fields, a barn, a farmhouse, chickens, a couple goats that refuse to respect fences, and an array of solar panels that power most of the operation. I invested in them because electricity costs were killing me and the local power co-op had a rebate program. I pulled permits, used standard inspection, the whole 9 yards. And no, there was no HOA, it is zoned agricultural, and my parcel predates most of the subdivisions here by decades anyway. Well, about a year ago, a new subdivision popped up on the other side of my back fence. The developer pitched it as country living with amenities. That amenities part included an HOA, which was fine by me. I don't live in it, I don't use their pool, and I don't need a board telling me what shade of beige is acceptable for a front door. But since the house is filled in, there's been a steady stream of weird interactions with the people who live there. Kids cutting through my fields, someone letting their golden retriever chase my chickens like it's a dog park, a couple putting a picnic blanket in my pasture like my livestock were ambience. Most of it I chalked up to folks not understanding that open space doesn't mean public park. So I put up more no trespassing signs. I introduced myself to a few of the closer neighbors. It helped a little. And then there's the guy directly behind me. He's the type who introduces himself as on the board. He came over not long after moving in and suggested that I paint my barn a neutral tone because the HOA's architectural guidelines prefer earth tones. I told him I was not in the HOA and I was not repainting my barn because the goats would just eat the paint chips off anyway. He kind of patted my arm and said, "We will see. We want to keep the neighborhood cohesive, you know." That was the first red flag. A couple months after that, I installed an expansion to my solar, added 2 more racks and a second battery. Again, I did it by the book. The town inspector came out, signed off, and the county updated my property record to reflect the improvement I made. I've even got PDF copies of everything because I learned a while ago that if you don't keep your own records, someone somewhere will misplace the only copy that matters. Right after that, I started getting more letters, not from the town though, from an HOA management company I'd never heard of, addressed to me by name, referencing my parcel number and calling my farm XYZ. I checked the plat map and this lot is in their subdivision. My parcel has its own meets and bounds description and a different parcel number entirely, by the way, but the letter had bullet points saying, "Architectural review denial, unapproved solar installation visible from common areas, violation notice, non-conforming accessory structure, barn, color, fine assessment, $100 per day until violation cured, demand to remove or screen solar array per CCNR section whatever," and then a friendly note about joining their landscaping vendor program. I laughed and tossed it aside. I figured it was a clerical error. I emailed the management company a copy of my deed and said, "I'm not in your HOA." They replied with a boilerplate, "Thanks for your email, we will review." And then 2 weeks later I got another letter saying the fines were now $1,400 and continuing. So I called. The rep said, "Our records show that your lot is part of the community." I said, "Your records are wrong." I sent them the plat map, my deed, a letter from the county recorder, and a pin drop of the border fence. Silence for a week and then a voicemail from the board asking me to come to their next meeting and work this out. I did not go, I'm not part of the HOA, not my circus, not my beige monkeys. I figured ignoring them would make this go away. And by the way guys, just a trick question here. Since we have read so many HOA stories, if an HOA starts to harass you, is the correct option to just ignore them and think that it will just go away by itself? Let me know in the comments. Anyway, that was my mistake. Next thing I know, a guy pulls into my driveway. He hands me a stack of papers. I get sued, like actual lawsuit sued. The caption says, "The HOA versus me, demanding injunctive relief to remove my non-compliant solar panels and pay $65,000 in accrued fines and attorney's fees." It's filed in county court. My wife came out to the porch while I'm flipping pages and said, "What is it?" I said, "Apparently I joined an HOA and forgot." I know enough to know that you never ignore a lawsuit. I also know enough to know this would cost real money even to get dismissed. I called the number for a land use attorney I found on my county bar association website and left a message. While waiting, I read the complaint. So it included a copy of their subdivision plat with a blob drawn around their whole development and part of my parcel, as if they annexed me. It also included minutes from a board meeting where they supposedly voted to extend community boundaries to align with utility easement and view shed. That is not how boundary lines work. They also included a photo of my solar array taken from behind my fence at an angle that would require someone to have been standing on my property. I recognized a boot print in the mud by the fencing, by the way. The attorney called me back. We will call him the attorney. He asked me to send everything over. I emailed him the complaint, the letters, my deed, the plat map, the solar permits, just everything. He called me the next day and said, "They don't have a leg to stand on, but we need to be careful." HOAs can be aggressive and drag things out. The first step is to file a motion to dismiss based on lack of subject matter jurisdiction and failure to state a claim. Also, a quiet title action as a cross-claim if needed to clear any clout. He quoted me a retainer that made me wince, but the alternative was potentially worse. We filed, the court set a hearing date. The attorneys sent a letter to their counsel demanding they withdraw or we would seek fees under the state's anti-SLAPP statute we have for property rights cases. He also copied the county recorder, the planning department, and the state's attorney general consumer protection division with a complaint about unauthorized attempts to enforce CC&Rs on non-member parcels. He does not mess around. The HOA responded with a longer brief full of nonsense about equitable servitudes and harmonious aesthetics, and they cited a case that involved a condo owner painting their balcony neon orange. Well, my farm is not a condo balcony, and they attached more pictures of my property, including one from inside my barn. That one stopped me cold. The angle showed my workbench labeling on battery units and a calendar with my kid's doctor's appointment visible. They took that through a window or an open door. That made my hands shake. I had not invited anyone inside, and the attorney said, "We are adding trespass to our counterclaims." But then it got worse. I came home one afternoon to find a notice posted on my front gate stating, "Stop work order from the Architectural Review Committee." It was laminated like they anticipated rain. A neighbor from the subdivision was parked across the street filming me from his phone. I walked up and asked what he was doing, and he said, "Documenting." "The board instructed me." I said, "Get off my property." He smirked and said, "Common area." I pointed to my no trespassing sign and said, "Call the sheriff if you think you're right." But he didn't, of course, he just sat there, so this is where I need advice. The hearing is in a couple of weeks, I've got an attorney, but I'm compiling stuff. What else should I be doing? Can I get a restraining order? How do I stop random HOA people from posting things on my gate and trying to enter my barn? If anyone here is a surveyor or attorney and can sanity check anything, I would appreciate it. I have trail cams, by the way. Should I use them? Can I post their videos if they are on my property? I'm not trying to go nuclear, but I'm feeling a bit nuclear. Some extra context because people will ask. The original farm parcel is old, the subdivision borders me along about 600 feet of fence, and there's a utility easement for the power company along that fence. The HOA seems to think that easement equals our common area. The easement is on my parcel, it lets the utility workers access equipment, and that's it. The solar install was permitted by the town and is in compliance with state law that specifically prevents HOAs from banning solar. Even if I was in their HOA, I'm not, they couldn't force me to remove panels. The HOA president is the guy behind me. He has sent me weird texts since day one. Stuff like, "You will find we have standards," after I parked my farm truck by the barn, and "It would be better for everyone if we could blend the view." I stopped responding. I didn't give him my number. He got it somehow. I suspect from a directory. I don't know. My wife is supportive but anxious. We have a kid. I don't like the thought of strangers peeking into the barn where the battery is. These are high voltage. Also, people messing with them could get them hurt. Money is not unlimited. The attorney told me there's a chance of recovering fees if the court finds their suit frivolous and in bad faith, and he sounded cautiously optimistic. I'm tired, I just want to farm my land and be left alone, happy to answer anything that helps within reason. Please no vigilante suggestions, I want to handle this legally and correctly. And yeah guys, let me know in the comments how you would handle this if you were in OP's shoes. And while you're at it, please don't forget to post some star emojis in the comments and maybe even like the video if you want to support me further, which would be very much appreciated. Thank you so much. Comment number 1. File for a temporary restraining order against the HOA and its officers for trespass and harassment. Your lawyer will know how. Serve them. Put up more signage, trail cams are good, don't post videos publicly yet, save them for court. Comment number 2. Order a fresh survey that stakes the property line and marks the utility easement. Invite the utility to confirm the easement scope. Photos of stakes next to their posted notices will help too. Comment number 3. Your neighbor is weaponizing the HOA. Document everything. Many HOAs carry directors and officers insurance, D&O, and if he acted outside the scope, the carrier will freak out. Consider notifying the carrier directly if you can identify it. Sometimes this alone stops the nonsense. Comment number 4. Send a certified letter to the HOA demanding they preserve all documents, emails, texts regarding your property. It's called a litigation hold letter. Their deletion can later be sanctions. Update to the story. So I took your advice to heart. This took months. It's resolved now in a way I didn't expect when I first posted, so buckle up, but I'll keep it focused. Right after posting, I met with my attorney in person. He helped me file for a temporary restraining order against the HOA and named officers prohibiting them from entering my property, approaching my structures, or posting anything on my gates. We attached photos of the stop work sign on my gate, screenshot of the texts, and a couple of trail cam stills showing 2 men in polo shirts stepping over the fence line. The judge granted a TRO ex parte for 14 days pending a full hearing, which was huge because it put immediate teeth in my no trespassing. The sheriff's office served the HOA and the president personally. The deputy told me, "Call us if they show up, we will enforce it." I slept better that night. I also ordered a new boundary survey from a licensed surveyor. He came out, pulled the deeds and flagged the corners and the utility easement path with bright tape and little orange flags. His comment when I told him about the HOA's claim was, "They are smoking something. Your line's right where the fence is." He sent me a stamped plat and staked it hard. I placed trail cams focused on those stakes, and then we sent a litigation hold letter to the HOA and their management company. Certified mail, return receipt, and an email. It was beautifully stern. Preserve all communications, meeting minutes, text, photos, videos, social media posts, and documents related to my name, my address, parcel ID, and references to solar panels, barns, easements, etc. I forwarded a copy to the management company's general counsel address I found on their website. My attorney CC'd the HOA's D&O insurance carrier, which he sniffed out by looking up the HOA's annual disclosure with the state. He said, "If the president is going rogue, the insurance company's claims department will become your ally because they don't like paying for stupid." We also sent a nice letter to the utility company asking for a statement clarifying the scope of their easement and if it's accessible only to utility personnel. A week later, we got an official letter that said exactly that: the easement allows the utility and its contractors access to maintain lines. It does not create public access or grant any HOA rights. A few days later, I caught someone on the trail cam at 2 AM. It was not the bored guy, it was a different neighbor, one I'd seen walking his dog before wearing a hoodie in my barn corridor by the battery door. He shined a flashlight into the window. Moments later, the alarm on the battery enclosure chirped and my camera caught him flinching and running. I called the sheriff, they came out, pulled the footage, and took a report. They actually dusted my barn door for prints, and that was the moment the vibe shifted from stupid HOA to "this is unsafe." The deputy asked me if anyone had threatened me, and I showed him the text from the HOA president: "Remove the panels or we will escalate." He raised an eyebrow. At the preliminary hearing on the HOA lawsuit, the judge looked skeptical of their claims, and my attorney was calm. He argued the lack of jurisdiction, the fact that I'm not subject to their CC&Rs, the state statute protecting solar, the survey, the utility letter, and the TRO. The HOA's lawyer stumbled through some nonsense about community standards, but the judge just asked, "Counsel, show me where the deed for his parcel references your CC&Rs." There was silence. The judge set a full hearing for the motion to dismiss and told them to consider whether they really wanted to spend their members' money on this. On the way out, the HOA president gave me a tight smile. I kept my mouth shut. That night, my trail cam pinged again. Same neighbor from the hoodie, but this time with a ladder, trying to look over the fence at my solar panels. I called the sheriff again. This time, they responded with 2 cars. They found the guy at the fence line when they pulled in, ladder in hand, and they detained him. They searched his backpack. Inside, a printout of a photo of my solar array, bolt cutters, and a pair of insulated gloves. My stomach dropped. They arrested him for trespass and possession of burglary tools. He claimed he was just checking compliance for the HOA. The deputy said, "You're not the HOA, and even if you were, that's not how this works." Well, the next day I emailed my attorney everything, including a copy of the arrest report, and he added it to our counterclaims. He also moved to amend to add claims for civil harassment and invasion of privacy. He was building a wall. Fast forward a bit, the D&O insurance carrier contacted my attorney. They were investigating coverage. They wanted to know why the HOA filed suit against a non-member and why there were allegations of trespass. We sent them the package. A week after that, the HOA management's company abruptly resigned from representing the HOA. It was in the HOA's own minutes posted on their website. Yes, I started reading their minutes. The note said, "Management company can no longer support current board actions." It felt like rats leaving a sinking ship. We did not take our foot off the gas pedal, though. We subpoenaed the HOA for their communications with the president about me, meeting minutes, and their claim that they extended the boundary. And yes, they tried to resist. The judge compelled production, though. When the emails came in, I nearly choked. There were messages from the president to the board like, "We cannot allow that eyesore to set the tone," and "If we annex his property into phase 2 via amendments referencing the utility easement, he'll be forced to comply." One board member replied, "We cannot annex land we don't own." The president responded, "We will do it informally first." He also forwarded photos of my barn taken from inside. How did he get those? Well, the metadata on one photo showed it was taken by the arrested neighbor. Attached was a message saying, "Got pictures. He leaves the site door open sometimes." My stomach turned again. We gave that to the sheriff's detective who had picked up the case after the second incident, and he said, "This is escalation. We're going to talk to the DA." Well, meanwhile, the court set our motion to dismiss. The hearing was a beatdown, honestly. The judge asked the HOA council again to point to any legal authority that their CC&Rs bind me, and they had none. My attorney argued that they had filed a frivolous suit to harass and intimidate us, and we sought sanctions and fees. The judge granted our motion to dismiss the HOA's claims with prejudice, which felt incredible to hear, set a separate hearing on our request for fees and sanctions, and let our counterclaims proceed. He also extended the restraining order for 6 months. I walked out of court breathing easier for the first time in weeks, but around that time, I got an anonymous letter in my mailbox. It said in block letters like a ransom note, "You think you won? Take the panels down." My wife cried. I called the sheriff again. They added it to the file. The detective said, "We're already neck deep in your neighbor's HOA drama. Sit tight." My attorney said deadpan, "They keep insisting you're part of their HOA. It would be a shame if you fully complied with their demands to participate in their governance as if you were a member." I said, "What does that even mean?" He said, "Attend their meetings, use their exact bylaws, demand notices, meeting minutes, and owner rosters. Use the rights they claim you have, and when they tell you that you're not actually a member when it inconveniences them, have that in writing." I laughed. It was petty, but it was also legal. So then I sent a certified letter to the HOA saying, "As a homeowner in the community, per your lawsuit, I'm exercising my rights under your bylaws to inspect records including the membership roster, budgets, contracts, and minutes. Please provide access within the statutory time frame." I also asked to be placed on the agenda for the next board meeting to discuss common area boundary signage adjacent to my parcel and security concerns. They wrote back, "Only members can inspect records." I replied, "You sued me as lot XYZ, which is it?" They did not answer that one. I showed up at their next board meeting. I wore a plaid shirt and work boots because I'd been in the field all day. The president's face when he saw me was priceless. They started the meeting with some boilerplate talk. During member comments I raised my hand. The president said, "You're not a member." I smiled and said, "Well, that's not what your complaint says." There were murmurs. A couple people turned to look at him. I held up a copy of the complaint they had mailed to everyone as part of some fundraising plea. I said, "You told your residents that my property is part of your community and that my barn is a violation. If that's true, I have rights. If it's not true, you owe a lot of people an explanation for spending their money on a dead lawsuit." Dead silence. A woman on the board cleared her throat and asked, "What is it that you want?" I said 3 things. 1. Stop trespassing. 2. Remove any references to my parcel from your materials. Number 3. Tell your residents to leave my property alone. And then I added, oh, and number 4. If I'm a member per your claim, I nominate myself to the Architectural Review Committee. Someone snorted. The president's neck turned red. I used their own claim to force them to say the quiet part out loud. He is not in the HOA. They said it loudly in front of their members. Someone recorded it on a phone, and that recording later became very useful. After that, a few residents reached out to me indirectly to apologize for how the board had handled things. One guy, the treasurer, met me at the fence. He looked stressed. He said quietly, I think the president has gone off the rails. He's ignoring counsel and he told us we could lose the case, but that it was worth it to make a point. He also said that there had been a recent closed-door meeting where the president proposed using HOA funds to hire a security contractor to monitor the perimeter of my farm. The treasurer voted no, and he looked scared. My attorney floated the idea to the DA of whether any HOA funds were being misused for illegal surveillance or trespass, and the DA's office perked up when they realized there were emails and money involved. This is where the pro-revenge part started to form. Because it turned out the HOA president had been using the HOA's landscaper to do side jobs at his house at a discount and billing some of it as perimeter enhancement, the treasurer shared invoices with us. Some of those perimeter enhancements were to my fence line, new holes cut, and quickly patched for access in case of emergency. That matched fresh assault marks I had noticed on a fence post near where the camera caught the ladder guy. It also matched a weird resin smear on my log, like someone had tried to defeat it. Armed with all of this, my attorney filed a separate civil harassment action against the president personally, not just the HOA, and we included the ladder incident, the photos from inside my barn, the text, the anonymous letter, which might as well have had his tone, the invoices, and the meeting video where he admits I'm not a member. The judge issued a temporary civil harassment restraining order pending a hearing. It barred him from coming within 100 yards of me, my family, my house, or my farm. It also barred him from directing others to do so, and the sheriff served him. I heard through the fence grapevine that his wife was furious and they were also investigating the HOA president for criminal conspiracy and stalking. A week later, they executed a search warrant at the president's house. I know because someone in the subdivision filmed it. 2 unmarked cars and a patrol car rolled up. They carried out boxes. The neighborhood Facebook group went wild. If there was a moment I felt bad, that was it. I don't like seeing anyone get perp walked in front of their kids, but then I remembered him telling me I would find out that they have standards like he was the king of beige country. My sympathy evaporated in the civil case though. The judge awarded me attorney's fees on the dismissed HOA lawsuit. The HOA had to cut a check to my attorney for a chunk of his hours. It didn't cover everything, but it took the sting out of the retainer. The judge also sanctioned the HOA for filing a frivolous suit. Not huge enough, but enough to make a point. He wrote in the order that HOA overreach into non-member properties' rights is a serious matter and cited the state solar statute. That order got picked up by a local paper and the HOA imploded. The management company was long gone, the insurance carrier sent a reservation of rights letter, and residents demanded a special meeting to recall the board. They removed the president and 2 other members who had been his yes-men. The treasurer stayed. A new interim board formed and reached out to me with an actual apology. They said they wanted to settle my counterclaims against the HOA, issue a public retraction regarding my property, and work with the DA. I said, put it in writing. And they did. My attorney drafted the settlement. The HOA paid a settlement amount that covered the remainder of my legal fees, some extra for my time and stress, and they agreed to install permanent signage along the fence stating, private property, no HOA access. They also sent a letter to every member explaining I'm not in the HOA and they had no right to sue me, and instructing residents not to interact with my property unless invited. And that letter was cathartic. Charges were filed against the president for felony conspiracy to commit burglary, misdemeanor stalking, and misdemeanor trespass based on evidence that he had coordinated residents to enter my property to document violations, used HOA funds to facilitate access, and personally directed this ladder incident guy. The ladder guy took a plea deal to lesser charges, did community service, and publicly apologized to me. He was dumb, easily manipulated, and he looked wrecked by the whole thing. The president refused to plead. He maintained it was civic duty and a misunderstanding. The case went to trial. I had to testify. I wore a clean shirt and told the truth. My wife testified too about the anonymous letter and how she was afraid to let our kid play outside if she was alone. The jury didn't take long. They convicted him on conspiracy and stalking. The judge sentenced him to a short stint in actual jail time, not years, but enough to require orange clothes plus probation, mandatory counseling, restitution to me and to the HOA for misused funds and a long-term restraining order. He also lost the board position permanently and was barred from serving on any HOA board in the county for a set period under a new ordinance they rushed through after my case hit the news. Watching the bailiff lead him away, I felt a mix of relief and something like justice. Not happy it's not fun to see someone's life crash, but satisfied. Actions have consequences, and remember how they said my solar array was an eyesore visible from common areas? Well, after the settlement, the new HOA board came to me with an idea. Would I consider planting a hedgerow along the fence line to soften the view? They offered to split costs for native shrubs. I said, I'm happy to if we do it right and you keep your people on their side. We signed a simple license agreement that allowed me access the fence from their side with notice for maintenance and allowed them to fund part of the planting through a voluntary donation from willing residents. No one would step on anyone's rights. I went one better though. I filed a small application with the town to add a decorative code-compliant privacy screen on my site. Not a fence change, just a black wire panel anchored to my posts with vines. The kicker? I sourced the vines that bloom and attract pollinators. The town loved it and the utility confirmed it didn't impede their easement. Because the president had claimed in court filings that my solar system was non-compliant with safety and that he was acting to protect residents, my attorney filed a complaint with the state licensing board against the president's employer. He worked in home inspections, because of course he did, for unethical conduct involving false statements about building systems. The employer did an internal review after the news coverage and apparently, from what I heard, they canned him. That was not my goal initially, but I cannot say I'm upset. If you're willing to lie in court about your neighbor's electrical system to get your way, you should not be inspecting houses. My farm is back to normal, by the way. The solar panels hum, the goats still ignore the fences, and best of all, my wife is not tense every time a car slows down near our driveway. I still keep the cameras up though, because I'm not naive, but the neighborhood has been quiet. And yeah guys, let me know in the comments if you enjoyed these XXL stories. And now let's move on to a funny small story that is titled No Home Equipment, No Problem, posted on r/malicious-compliance. So I work for an agency, and ever since I started 8 years ago, I've always had my own computer equipment like keyboards, mice, etc. and no one has questioned it, not even IT. I get moved to a new small shared office, bring in an extra monitor from home so that I have 3 monitors and get to work. I receive a call after they investigate my office saying it is against policy to use home equipment, despite me having done so previously and IT being aware of it. Immediately, I make a list of all the stuff I'm using that the company should then provide for me, like headphones, a docking station and monitor for working at home. I unplug my monitors, mousepad, keyboard and mouse, plug in back the company's hardware and slow down my work output drastically. I then take the monitor they gave me and plug it in to replace the monitors I had to take down and look at them with a poop-eating grin when management came to check if I complied. Well, you get what you wish for, and now, since my work output has dropped, they are forced to rebalance the workload. And the next one is a petty revenge story, and it's titled Old Friends Screwed Me Over After I Essentially Created Their Business. So there's some backstory to this post. About 2 years ago, my friend, let's call him Jared, came to me asking about bartending. At that point, I'd been bartending for about 7 years and had opened a few big-name successful bars. He mentioned wanting to buy a local music venue and rebrand it. Fast forward to the business starting, I created the entire POS system, hired all the bartenders, did all of the inventory ordering, etc. None of the owners have ever been in the service industry and didn't know a single thing about anything. I would never get paid on time, got treated terribly by them, and they never lived up to their end of the deal. They owe me a lot of money and spread some horrible lies about me. Now for the petty revenge though. So I recently discovered this old app on my phone that controls the entire setup, lighting etc. to this place. I'm pretty positive I'm still the only one who can remotely control this unless you are at the bar. Of course, they never removed my access, and more than likely I have no idea how to, unless they were to redo all of the setup on the back end. I decided to have some fun with this the other night. I changed all the lights several times while the bar was open, and certainly not during a busy time, but just to test it out. I got the message on the app that said successful, and I knew I was golden. So, I turned them all off several times, waited a bit and continued to do it. I know they had absolutely no idea what was going on, and they turned off all the power to the place twice and then reset the breakers. I could tell this because all of the devices were offline. I let this go on for about 20 to 30 minutes and decided not to overdo it too much because they wouldn't get suspicious just yet. Either way, I did have an absolute blast watching all of the lights turn back on through the app just for me to mess with them over and over again. The best part though, they are now set on automatic timers to turn off at 12 every Friday, Saturday and Sunday, but don't worry, the dance room upstairs will still have light, but the entire bar area will go dark. And yeah guys, thank you for watching, I will see you again tomorrow. Also, please check out my playlist on the left if you cannot get enough of my content because there's literally hundreds of hours of videos.